Welcome to episode 179 of the Access Noize podcast. I'm Mark Miller. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to iconic producer Arthur Baker. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, so check it out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Arthur Baker left Boston for New York at the start of the 1980s. Initially DJing and producing disco and soul, he was drafted in by Tommy Boy Records to produce for hip-hop crew Afrika Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. Planet Rock, the seminal single, came out of those sessions, which kick-started the electro revolution. Fast forward 40 years of hip-hop and electro street culture, and now Arthur is a bona fide legendary music figure. Now he has teamed up with the UK house rhythm master Steve Mack for the Sax Machine EP. In this interview, Arthur discusses the early days of hip-hop, the Sun City album, the Sax Machine EP, remixing huge hit records, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Access Noize podcast with Arthur Baker. Hi, Arthur. Welcome to the Access Noize podcast.
Hey, man. Good to be on from Miami to Belfast.
I wish I was in Miami today.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very sunny and really clear out and nice temperature. So not too hot. Can't complain.
Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
God, it would probably have to be, it was either Dave Clark 5, Bits and Pieces, Rolling Stones, obviously. It was that era. I remember I would have been in fourth, probably like 9, 10. I remember being in the schoolyard, marching around to Glad All Over, Dave Clark 5. So, not that they were the band that I sort of ended up being into after the fact, but I'd say the Stones, because, I did see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, of course, but I think the Stones had that raw thing that I liked. And, so it would have been part of the British invasion. So that would have been like 65, 64. I was 9 or 10. That's how old I was at that time. So.
Has music always been the career path that you wanted to follow, or did you have other ambitions?
Yeah, I think it sort of was the career path for me. Like if I grew up in England, I would have wanted to be a footballer, and growing up in Boston with the Celtics, I would wanted to be a basketball player, of course. Other than that, then I thought maybe I'd be a lawyer because I couldn't sing. I didn't want to be in a band, so I was thinking. In the beginning, it was that, and then once I discovered what a producer did, I said, "Oh, I could do that." And that was, and then DJing, producer, that sort of came when I was probably around 13 or 14, maybe around then, or just when the first time I heard Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and then I looked at the record and I saw it was Norman Whitfield, and around that time, black music was really took, even though I was always into rock and Allman Brothers and David Bowie and all that kind of thing. Sort of the type of music I thought I could make was sort of more R&B, dance, Philly, Motown. So, that's when I thought maybe I could do this. That would be when I was around 16 that I thought I could actually start making records for some reason. I worked in record shops and stuff. So I was really, at that time, I really got into being involved in music when I was 16.
So what came first, being a producer or being a DJ?
Well, as a DJ, to me, DJing was a means to an end to be a producer. Basically, I started DJing when I was about 18, 19. When I went to college, I always had records, and I'd go to New York and buy 45s and stuff. So I wanted to DJ, but I always with the eye around really early on with an eye to being a producer. So, like I was working at a record shop DJing, and then I took a course, engineering course, and that was probably in 78. So I was like 22, 23. And that's when I thought, okay, I could produce records. And I got right into it. You had to have the gift of the gab and hustle and all that to get people to give you studio time or whatever. But I started off, I was never a big, I was never a superstar DJ. And when I moved to New York, I didn't even ever DJ. So it was more that I DJ'd in Boston. And then when I moved to New York, boom, I was a producer. And that's sort of that was the career path. And it was a producer, not a remixer. So, before becoming a remixer, I had to prove myself as a producer, which obviously most people start DJ, remixer, producer. I started bad DJ, producer, remixer, DJ, so.
What kind of producer are you like in the studio? Are you one of those producers who just doesn't get involved and doesn't play any instruments and just makes suggestions, or are you right in there?
Well, all my early success, all the records people know me for, I was like programming, playing beats, playing bass lines, co-writing songs. So, I see myself as a producer, as a member of the band. And my most successful things were when I was able to co-write, because it kept me more engaged. It was more being engaged by being part of the band. The records I did where I really, wasn't that involved, ended up not being that good. To me, that's the type of producer I am. There are other types of producers who are engineers and are really good, and they're musicians who could change parts and all that. Now, I'm not a musician per se, but I play. And, I could change a bass line and say, play that bass line, which is what got me, why I enjoyed being a remixer more than a producer. Because a remixer, you go in on your own and you just change the track the way you want it for what the job is, to make it more danceable. And back in the day, after proving that I could do dance records really well as a producer and writer, that's when I started getting these gigs as a remixer. So I before I got any remixes or any notable remixes, I proved myself as a producer.
Yeah, because you were there back in the day, back in the early days of hip hop and electro. You were producing for Tommy Boy Records.
Yeah.
Like Afrika Bambaataa, Sonic, or Soul Sonic Force with Planet Rock. That was right at the beginning of hip hop. So what was it like then? What can you remember?
Well, I remember a lot with that. It was, I knew Tom because he had Dance Music Report, which was a sort of a little magazine. I used to review records for him. I had met him in different music conventions. There was like the Billboard Disco Convention, and we both went to that. He went to school in I think in Boston, if not, in Massachusetts. And he started a label, and he said, "Oh, I want to do a label. I know this guy, Afrika Bambaataa, who has all these rap groups." And we went in first with Jazzy 5. And I brought in a band, musicians who I knew from when I worked on Happy Days, Tease Happy. So I had these musicians from New York, young guys who knew about beats and grooves, and they were all like kids themselves. They were in their early 20s. And we went in, and I picked Jazzy Funky Sensation by Gwen McCrae to cover it. And we did the cover, and it sold. It got on the radio. Mr. Magic played the shit right away. And it was all really, it was successful. So then we went in with another one of the groups, which was Soul Sonic Force. And we went in this time. That was the change, because we got a drum machine for that one. We didn't need a band. We decided to go with a drum machine. And Bambaataa had met a keyboard player named John Roby. So he came in and played keys on it. And it was just sort of a magical moment. And we made a record, and it blew up, in New York immediately, and then all over America, and then traveled the world, and it was sort of the change, because it was when electronics really came into play, drum machines and all that, and the marriage of drum machines and rap, and just sort of, it just created like a new sound. So it was definitely an exciting time. And the rappers didn't get it at all when they heard the track, because they wanted something more like Jazzy Sensation, because they were more comfortable with that. Because at that time, all rap were covers of current hits like Good Times, Rapper's Delight, and things like that. They were all sort of a cover of something that was on the charts or something that was relatively new, whether it's To Be Real, whatever the track would be. So that would have been the safe bet. But Bam definitely was into the the Kraftwerk sound, and I had heard Numbers in a record shop, and I thought that should be the beat. So we merged the two Kraftwerk songs, and none of it was samples, because samples didn't really exist yet. So it was all replayed, and that Planet Rock.
And what's your opinion about how hip hop's evolved from those days when you were heavily involved in it until now?
Yeah, it's amazing that it's evolved, and it's amazing that it's probably the number one pop music, because not only does it sell and does it travel to these gigs, it also has influenced that sound we created then, influenced other sounds. And now you can listen to beats on a Taylor Swift record, and they're 808. They're like the beats that we were doing 40 years ago. I mean, through a blender, through other producers, through young guys who may not have even heard Planet Rock. They would have heard like The Weeknd, and The Weeknd heard Neptunes, and it travels. But I hear the roots of a lot of pop music, in their roots start in the 80s electro. So, they I'm sure they don't even know the tracks, but I can hear it. When I hear the beat, I'm like, oh, whoever produced that would have heard that, who would have heard that. So it all, I'm not going to say it all goes back to Planet Rock, but the beats that were coming out of the 808 at that time are still the foundation of, not even, I mean, you say hip hop, I say pop music, whether it's Ed Sheeran or whoever, they're all influenced by early electro hip hop. So I think, guys like Nas and Drake and Dr. Dre and Jay-Z. I mean, come on, they're the biggest, in the industry. I mean, so it's just Pharrell. So hip hop has sort of taken over, to me, sort of taken it all over.
After that, there you went on to, remix, big artists, like Bruce Springsteen, The Stones, New Order, Diana Ross, Tina Turner, Cyndi Lauper. But what was the first remix you ever did?
Well, the first remix I think it was either Surprise for Central Line or Star by Second Image, both of which are on my compilation that I did with Demon, Dance Masters. So that's a great sort of overview of my remix career. So they're both on that. Well, Star's on that. I don't know if Surprise, Star's on there. And these are ones that I had liked the bands, and I had heard them before Planet Rock. I had heard those tracks, and I had sort of called people and said, oh, I want to do the remix. But obviously I did the remix, and then things blew up, and, they didn't even, I think they came out before that, because they didn't even credit me, because I had Happy Days before T's Happy sort of got me on the board as a producer, for sure. T's Happy, and also North End Kind of Life. So those two tracks, I was in the game, already before Planet Rock and before Jazzy Sensation. So I did have stuff. So those would have been the first remixes I did that weren't my own records. I had, Kind of Life and T's Happy. I mixed with T. Scott. But the first the first one I was hired for that actually did anything was Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And that sort of opened up Bruce. I got the Bruce stuff because the Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And then from there, it just all took off. But, you know, I mean, with like, for instance, Diana Ross, I produced that record. And also like with Hall & Oates in 84, Hall & Oates and Diana Ross, those were both productions that I mixed. So basically I went from, you know, the Bruce Springsteen, Cyndi Lauper back to production, even though I was hired because of those. But, you know, those, you know, Out of Touch and Swept Away were both in 84. So, you know, and then the real onslaught of remixes came in 86, really, because 86, 87, when I went to London, I started doing a ton of remixes when I was in London. That sort of opened the gates for all the remixes, really. And because in 85, 84 and 85, I did Beat Street and I did Sun City. And then I was doing like Bob Dylan. And so I really didn't do a lot of remixes in that year. And then 86, it was just tons. Big Love and Living in a Box and a bunch of others. I mean, then it really took off. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of those in depth. But first of all, I'd like to know, you know, what is your process when you're asked to remix a track? You know, when a band or artist send you tracks, like, we want you to do your work on this. How does it evolve?
I mean, it's different because back in the day, it was more like, what do I need to change to make the thing danceable? Because back then it was like they're hiring me to do a dance remix, right? So I would try to change as little as possible to make it something that I would play or that I know my friends would play. So the thing would be, it would really depend on the song, you know, like on Dancing in the Dark, it had a really cool beat already, and it had sort of a new wavy type beat. So I added production elements that I thought would make it catchier, things I thought were already missing. And then in the arrangement, the breakdowns and stuff. So in that, it was a different view on that one than when I did Cover Me. So Cover Me is a different situation. The difference between what I did with Dancing in the Dark, which was, like I said, adding like almost like Phil Spector arrangement things to it, and then making drops and making breaks. That was sort of more of an old school remix that you would have done in the 70s when people were doing remixes. It was just new intro, some drops, whatever. Cover Me, I changed the bass line, which is a pretty, you know, that might have been the first remix anyone did in the pop vein of someone going in and saying, I'm going to change the bass line, because guys like John Luongo, he would add percussion and he would do that. I don't think he or any of the other guys who were making remixes actually brought a bass player in and did a new bass line. You might change the drums, but I heard a reggae element to it, so I brought in a guy named Brian Rock from a group I had signed to my label called Mojo Naya. And he played the bass, and I was like, I want a reggae, you know, vibe, like a Sly and Robbie thing. So we did that, and it gave it a whole other element. I put the percussion in, and to this day, that's one of my favorite remixes I've done, because I can play it out now in any club, and, you know, whether it's a reggae club or a vinyl bar or whatever, it really sounds amazing, and the groove is there. Then the next one was Born in the USA. That one, I just went back to the formula of Dancing in the Dark, which was just drops, beefing up the drums. So, you know, it really would depend on the remix. Big Love, again, I changed the bass line, added, you know, I kept the song and the guitars, but I redid the music. I did the piano and bass and drums. So it would really depend on the song. Now, it's more like, do they really want the song? When I do a remix, I just did Mylene Farmer, who's the French artist. She's just done a sort of a look at her career with all her greatest hits, but she didn't have any of the parts or anything. So she just gave the remix as a vocal, and we were able to create our own thing. So with that, I've just sped it up a bit, recorded all the music to her vocal, and that, so what I'm saying is it's really sort of depending on what the song is, what they want, that with that they wanted a vocal version, but something that would, work for the song. I did Yard Act. I did the Trenchcoat Museum. They're a new group out of I think they're out of Leeds. And with that, they had a great vocal version. So I just sampled a few of the vocals and a little of the bass line and just had my keyboard player come in. And that was sort of more like a dub version of the song. So it really depends on what I'm mixing. I did Be a Rebel recently, 3 years ago for New Order. And that one, I just wanted to do a traditional New Order remix. So I added a bunch of stuff that I thought that they might have done themselves 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I added those elements and did the mix for that. So
is it harder to remix rock acts than traditional dance acts?
Well, I mean, it depends on the song, I mean, Cover Me, when I heard it the first time, it really immediately I heard what I wanted to do with it, because to me, no, it depends on the song. And for me to I remixed Interpol Obstacle 1 back in the 2000s when it came out, and that one I had heard. I made that remix to be played at Trash at Errol Alkin's club, and I made it more bombastic, and I didn't change any music per se, but I just beefed it up, kept the song in, did some breaks. So, it really depends. I mean, I love doing remixes on rock acts if it's a song I think I could do something with. So when I did that one, I knew I could do something really cool with it, and it wasn't really difficult to do. Obviously, I don't get offered any big rock records to remix right now. I don't get offered many records to remix. But like I said, the Mylene Farmer, that's sort of a sexy French like 80s vibe, and the Yard Act is definitely 80s also, I mean, those are the last two I've done as remixes. So, but if someone came out with a great rock track, I could do rock. I can make any good rock song that is in the right tempo. I think I could make it into a dance record. I mean, if I like it, like Big Love. The first time I heard it, I just said, this could be it. It had the right tempo, the vocal was right, and I just thought, okay, that was probably the first house remix of a rock record. I would say that, I don't think anyone did a house remix of a rock record before that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite remixes that you've done. So
Thank you.
It's absolutely fantastic. You're saying it was one of the first rock remixes probably ever done. So were you surprised?
No, I'd say.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry.
I would say it is the first house remix of a rock record. I can't, because it was 87, early 87. House had just started, so there were definitely no house remixes of rock. I mean, there might have been other house remixes of pop, or I don't know when the Roberta Flack thing came out, the because I did one side and Steve Silk Hurley did definitely a house remix, but that she wasn't a rock act. So I really don't really know if there were any. If anyone out there knows, I'd be glad to be proven wrong. But I'm pretty sure that was the first house remix.
Because of that, were you surprised that you were asked to remix it?
No, because there's a story behind how I was asked to remix it. I was in London and I had just done Living in a Box, and I was on the Tube with Paula Yates, and she was asking me about, what was I working on? Did I have anything exciting that I worked on? And I said, well, I did a remix of this group, London group, Living in a Box, and I predict it's going to be a big hit. And then it was like a top 5 pop record, and it was off of my remix. So Michael Austin from Warner's had been in London at the time, right? So I get a call from him, and he goes, it was 87, whatever, and he I get a call and I go, "Oh, what's up?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I got something I want you to hear. I happen to be in LA." I went to his office and he played me Big Love. And he said, "Can you make that a dance record?" I go, "Yeah, I know." I heard it. I said, I knew exactly by the end of the record, I knew what I could do with it. And the head of dance, Craig Kostic was out. This was in Burbank. And I came out and he said, "Oh, what were you doing with Michael?" I said, "Oh, he played me a track he wants me to remix." And he goes, "What track?" And I go, "Oh, Fleetwood Mac, Big Love." And he goes, "Oh, that's not a dance record." I go, "Yeah, it's a dance record." And then it went like top number 8 or something in the Billboard dance chart. But it was I think if Craig had hired me, he would have pushed it to number 1. I think he may have held it back. I don't know, but it's a record that still sort of works now. And yeah, so I mean, I didn't think when I heard the record, I knew I could do something with it, and he only hired me for that because he had heard me talking about it. He told me, "I heard you talk about living in a box," and then it was a hit. And then your remix was so cool. I thought, maybe, and then I did another Fleetwood Mac remix, a Family Man, which is, if it hadn't been for Big Love, a lot people would definitely sort of know more. Family Man's a really good remix, and Dimitri from Paris tells me that that's like a go-to thing. He plays that often. So, it's sort of, it's another one that is I played it on my radio show the other day, and it really sounded really good. So, yeah. So Fleetwood Mac connection, those two were, was really happy with both of those actually. And I've never, I'm trying to think of records I was offered to mix that I turned down. The one big one I was offered "Shout" by Tears for Fears, and I turned it down because it was so slow. And at that point, you couldn't really speed things up to that. And Steve Thompson and Michael Barbieri did it, and they did a really good remix. But I would say that's the one that I regret having turned down, because it would have been nice to have done it. But other than that, I don't remember turning down anything that I actually regret having turned down.
One of the most unusual ones of yours I heard, I'd never heard Bob Dylan being remixed before, and you did a fantastic version of "When the Night Comes," "Falling from the Sky."
Yeah, well, I was brought in to finish his album. They didn't hire me to do dance mixes. They hired me to finish the album, go in with him and work with him on the vocals, and basically to produce, but without being called the producer, because they paid me like a producer, but I didn't get any points. But the bottom line is, so I said, "Oh, when I was doing When the Night Comes Falling, I put percussion. I want to do a remix of it." And then the thing is, the tapes of that, Bob Dylan takes everything back. Even when he was doodling at the end of the session, he would pick everything up, because he knows what he knows what it was worth, right? But somehow I had 2 half-inch tapes of pieces of the dub that I did for When the Night Comes Falling. So I cut it together, and it's on that Dance Masters compilation. I think it's the only place it's ever been released. It was never, the song did come out as a single, but they never put the 12-inch out or anything. But
that's where I heard it.
Yeah. It's dubby. It's sort of, because Sly and Robbie played on that. That's Sly and Robbie playing on it. So, if I had the multi to that, now I could really do something. I was really limited with what I had piece-wise, but it's cool. Actually, I've worked on a dub. What's on the record, what's on my Dance Masters, I think is the version I did at the time. But I've actually, since then, I've done a dub, like a 15-minute dub. Really, it's more like Big Train Robbery that I did with Black Uhuru. So it's a lot of drops, and it's danceable, but it's sort of, yeah. It was fun to do, for sure.
Another favorite, it's probably one of my favorite tracks from the 80s, is Robbie Neville, "C'est la vie."
Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun remix, because it was already out as a single, and it was going up the chart. And I got the call, and they were like, "Come on, you got to do it really quickly." And I'm not sure if I did it in London, but I think when I got offered it, I was in London, and I just said, "What would It was sort of like Jam and Lewis meets Robbie Neville. I went for Just Be Good to Me. The 808. The funny thing is, the first time I heard an 808 used by anyone else other than myself was Jam and Lewis using it on SOS Band, and I remember hearing it and going, "Oh shit, they've discovered the machine." And then when I did the Robbie Neville thing, I felt like I was justified to cop their sort of groove on there, and obviously it was a slow track, so you had to do something, you had to go that route. You couldn't really go anything else at that point. It was either that or like soul to soul beat, which that one I did on the Quincy Jones, I'll Be Good to You, but when I did a remix, I did a version that was basically, a soul to soul remix, really, because it's down tempo. Nowadays you can't play a down tempo in a club, but back then in the '80s, late '80s, you could change tempo and go that route and then pick it back up. But I have heard no one do that in a club for years. I mean, in a bar, yeah, but in a real club, I haven't heard that happen.
And you mentioned the 808, and you went on to make a documentary.
Yeah,
the 808. What inspired you? Why did you feel you had to do that?
Well, I mean, strangely enough, I was inspired to do it actually by David Guetta, to be honest with you, because I went to see David at Pasha, and when we had met years ago, but when I went, he said, "Arthur Baker, where's your 808? You should bring your 808 back." And I started thinking about it. And at that point, I didn't have an 808 because I had lent it to Seven Fisher, and it got locked up in his lockup, and he paid me back for it. But then I had it. So then I went out and bought another 808. And then I started thinking about 808 and how it was everywhere because he used the sounds. Everyone was using the sound. So I figured, yeah, why not make a documentary on it? And I hooked up with a guy named Alex Neuer and Luke Bainbridge, and Alex and Dunn. We made the doc out of London. I was living in London at the time, and with the doc, I wanted to sort of give credit to the strange type of people who were attracted by the 808, because the story is the machine and the people who use the machine, because some people would not use it because that doesn't sound like drums. That sounds like a toy, but the type of character who would use the 808 is a special type of person. And I wanted to show the people who actually had used the 808, like Rick Rubin said, the 808, it doesn't sound like drums. It sounds like the 808. And people, he used it famously with LL Cool J and Beastie Boys and, Pharrell and, all the other Strafe and Man Parrot, people who were using the 808. So I thought that it was something, I wanted to capture that story, and I felt that, I knew the story, as well as anyone else. So I figured, why not do it? And I think it was a pretty successful doc,
What's your memories of the Sun City project?
Well, lots. People ask me what I'm most proud of, and actually, Sun City is the thing I'm most proud of having sort of done, because not only did I make the record with Steven, but also we made the record. If we hadn't done it, it wouldn't have been done. So it isn't like just sort of making a record. That took 6 months out of my life, and just sort of the having to put these people together. I mean, bottom line is actually the business side of it was a job in itself, and then getting the artist and then making it all work. So it was, you never knew who would turn up, and people would come up on their own. Like some of the best artists would just sort of walk into the studio on their own. No entourage, no minders, no anything, no assistant. Like Miles, Peter Gabriel, Lou Reed, they all showed up. Just, yeah, we're here. What can we do? It was a different, it was obviously a different time in the world and in music. And, I feel really honored to have been able to do it and grateful that we actually made it happen and that it raised awareness and it raised cash, but it was more the awareness. And pretty much after we did that, no major artists played South Africa after that. So I think we really did what we set out to do, along with making a cool record and making a cool album, because originally it was meant to be, one song, and then it turned into an album. So, and it's 40 years next year. It's 40-year anniversary. So it's pretty crazy. But just the artists we had, like Gil Scott Heron and Big Youth, and we just had some. I mean, it was really a mad collection of artists. When you think about it, who was on that record?
Keith Richards was on it. Keith Richards,
Keith and Ronnie, yeah.
Bono.
They played on the track Bono did. The Bono track. We finished that the day we were mastering the album. I mean, he came into town to be in the video, and after the video, he called me up and he said, "Oh, can you get me a guitar? I want to write a song." So I got him a guitar. And then because he had gone in with Keith and Ronnie and Peter Wolf, they hung out all night and they played him blues songs. And he had said he had never listened to the blues at all, like ever. He'd never listened to the blues. And he was really inspired by the blues, the Sun City thing. And he went in and he wrote Silver and Gold. And he said, I got to record this song. So we went in and we cut it. He cut it. He played guitar and he was kicking the floor for a beat. And then we got like Keith LeBlanc, may rest in peace. He did like a box. He played a box. And then Bono wanted Keith and Ronnie to play on it. So we went over to the Stone session. They were making the album with Steve Lillywhite. And we went and we had to stay up all night. Literally, we got there at 2 a.m. And then by 4, they had played us the whole album. We had drinks with them. They had a bar set up with the right track. And then they came in and played on it. And, and then I was like, okay, I gotta go home to bed now. And we were going to go mix it with Tom Lord Alge and Bono. We were going to go mix it. I actually went to Power Station with them. And then they said, oh, we're going to have to align the machines and all this. I said, listen, I'm going to go home for a few hours. I'll come back. When I came back the next morning, me and Steve came back and Bono and Tom Lord Alge had stayed up all night and they finished the mix. And that was the making of that track. So it was pretty amazing, actually. Really, really cool.
And more recently, you teamed up with UK house rhythm master Steve Mack on the Sex Machine EP.
The Sex Machine EP, because, we're both sex machines. And Irvin, who owns the label with Steve and Carl, it's Sex Machine. He's a sex machine. But bottom line is, I made this track, started making it 7 or 8 years ago in Ibiza after going to DC 10, and I wanted to make this music that would fit in that world. And I went back to my hard drive, and I had gone in 1983 with 83 or 84 with Sly and Robbie and Fred Czar and John Roby, who 2 keyboard programmers, producers I had used. And we went in and we tried to do a version of Sex Machine, James Brown, but a reggae version, but it didn't work at all. And we didn't, but I had the tape of the rhythm, the bass, and the drums. So basically, that's why it's called Sex Machine, because I sampled the bass and the drums of Sly and Robbie when we were trying to do Sex Machine. It isn't Sex Machine at all. It's just a groove. So Sly and Robbie, whatever, they were involved in my early years. So we've used it, and that's one of the tracks on the EP. So there's some sort of rock and roll connection, at least, you know. Sly and Robbie were not on Sun City, unfortunately, but, you know, some sort of connection. I think it's a really cool EP. And it was originally going to be Sex Machine. And then we had the other track, Beans, because the girl, the vocal sample in that, which is from a song I worked on, she's going, Hein, you know, like, so I was thinking Heinz, and the only way I could remember the track was Heinz Beans. So that's why it's called Beans, you know, which is, I think it's sort of funny. But the other track, Losing You, had been out maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We put that out. And when Steve started talking about doing the record, I said, why don't you go in and do a remix of Losing You, that track, which he did in like probably in 3 or 4 hours. He said he did it. And that sounds really rocking too. So I think as an EP, I think we've got, you know, really, I think we've got 3 playable club tracks that I think different people are playing different tracks. But A-Track called me up and said, oh man, that EP, man, that track Beans, I'm playing that. And I was like, wow, that's cool. You know, that, because I mean, we didn't make it so that the guys out there will play it, and, you know, really happy that he's playing it, and Chaz James is playing Beans, you know, then other people are playing Losing You. I mean, the reaction's been good, you know, and to the extent that Steve and I are going to go in, when I'm in the UK this summer, we're going to go in and do a follow-up, and I'm going to be DJing with him in Brighton. And so I'm looking forward to all of that. But yeah, it's fun to have new music out that, you know, that could possibly be getting played in clubs. You know, the other one I did was Powder to the Nose with James Herr. That's done really well. That's another track that's out now. And then there was a remix of Put the Needle to the Record that was out. So there's stuff that I'm associated with that I could play a set of things, new things that wouldn't get me laughed off the dance floor at any new club, you know. So it's sort of, it's good to have new ammunition for if I ever get asked to play any of these, you know, more modern clubs, you know. Because now I'm being asked to do vinyl sets at, you know, vinyl bars and stuff. But and with my radio show, I get to play whatever I want. So I'll play new things and old things or whatever.
Out of all the projects you've been involved in, which ones do you feel have had the most significant impact on your career or the music industry as a whole?
Well, Planet Rock, you know, that on my career, Planet Rock. Then I'm not saying on a personal level, the Springsteen remixes, I feel really good about those as a group of things. Al Green, Leave the Guns at Home, and Messages Love. Those two, you know, to work with Al Green, to have him sing songs I've written. Sun City, as I said, of course. God, you know, what else? The Tina Turner track that I wrote, that, you know, we wrote a track, me, Taylor Dane, and Fred Czar wrote a track for Tina Turner. It got recorded by 2 other artists before, Sandra St. Vicar, and then who had been at Family Stand. And then we also gave it a go with Naomi Campbell. She tried it out. It didn't really, she didn't have the chops for it. Really nice girl, but didn't have the chops. And then to have it done by Tina Turner, you know. But then the best part for me is then being asked to remix it and doing like a really cool jungle remix of it, which is one of, I would say it's in my top 10 favorite remixes I've ever done, because it's just so fucking mad. And it's just like, you know, when I play it out now, people can't believe it, to be honest with you. It's you know, it's a great one. So I would say that would be in my top 10, you know. I don't think I can limit it to, you know, any one thing, you know. I mean, as a project, Sun City for sure. As something that influential Planet Rock, you know. But then there are other things that would be in the top 10 for sure.
Is there an artist or a band that you would like to work with in the future that you haven't before?
Well, the thing was, I had always had this dream of working, doing a song with Al Green and Bob Dylan together, which I know it would just be the best record ever. And I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. But to do a gospel song, the two of them, it could be unbelievable. But maybe AI, maybe I could just get their voices and do an AI. But I always had that idea, and I never really had anything. It would be like if someone came to me for a movie soundtrack and said, "What would you like? What do you think would work?" And I would say, "Yeah, let's get Bob Dylan and Al Green, and it would be it would be an amazing record song. I know it could be anything. They could sing the Telephone Book, and they'd be like, it would work. But I just I'm sure it's just I'm not in contact with either, and it would take a movie company going, oh, what a great idea, here's money, we'll sort it out, and then we go in and do it, because I'm talking about not a big production either, like acoustic guitars and maybe a choir. It would be, I hear it, I know what it would be, because I used Dylan's song "I'll Remember You." It was the end titles for Fried Green Tomatoes film, and I did it with Grace and You with a choir. And Dylan got back to me and said, like a year or two later, he said, "I love what you did," because we had done the song on Empire Burlesque, but I wasn't able to do exactly what I wanted to. And when I did it for the movie, I was, and he came back and said, "Oh, that was great. That's a great take on it." So, yeah, it's just like I don't think it's going to happen, but that's the one. Other than that, sure, I wouldn't mind doing an electro record with Taylor Swift. She's
Wow.
super talented. She can sing really well, and my daughter loves her. So my daughter's 10, and going to be 10 next week, and an aspiring singer. She has a band and everything. So,
Well, so does my daughter. In fact, she's messaging me there while we're talking on WhatsApp, because I sent her a link for an article about Neil Tennant from Pet Shop Boys. Was talking about her, and he says, yeah,
he said, yeah, she doesn't have her. What did he
Billie
say?
Jean.
Yeah,
Don't have a Billie Jean.
Neil, sorry, mate. You're what's the Pet Shop Boys Billie Jean? West End Girls, the bottom line is, I think he's never going to think she has her Billie Jean. My daughter thinks she has 5 Billie Jeans. It's just, you can't look at it that way. What's, I'm going to think of what's Lady Gaga's Billie Jean? What's, I'm not sure. Billie Jean might be, a one-off for a one-off artist. I don't really, I did see him saying that, and I was sort of surprised, because I think she's super talented, and, the breadth of her work. She's made great country records. She's super talented. You can't take it away from her,
Yeah, well, my daughter just messaged me back, and she said, I can't name one Pet Shop Boys song.
I can name the ones I remix, into the nice suburbia, I can, but no, come on. That's just like get off my lawn type of vibe. I'm just like, you know what? She makes great records. Millions of people love her. Like, whatever. It's like,
just a few more, Arthur. What advice would you give the aspiring DJs and producers who are just starting out in the industry? Because it's different now. People can make music in their bed.
I don't know, man. That I can't. You know what? People ask me that. It's just, don't quit your day job. Don't quit your day job. Do it as a hobby. Have a fallback. Don't quit your day job. To me, because the bottom line is, it's so competitive that you should have one other thing you could do well, that you can have as a fallback. Because I think maybe if you're not relying on that 100%, it takes the pressure off, and maybe you end up making something great because you're not under pressure, So, anyone can do it now. That's the thing. Everyone has the technology. Everyone has the same technology. And it's just really, I don't want to be a downer. And and I know a lot of talented people, it's like half of it is being able to play social media, so it's sort of now you have to be more than just an artist. You have to be, oh, you know what? No, one thing, get a friend who is super business savvy and have a manager from day one. Have your guy who you can depend on, or your woman you can depend on to help you with the business. Because basically that is so important, to have that covered. And usually artists aren't the best people to do that for themselves. And I made many mistakes because my personality wasn't the type that could do that. And I just let things ride. And I think if I'd have one thing, get a manager or get someone to be your partner on the business side. And, as far as the music side, man, you can't tell people what to do. They're going to go out. Don't be afraid to test your music out to an audience, because you hear music differently when you test it to an audience, right? So basically, when you're hearing it through other people's ears, it'll be really, you'll become aware of what's wrong with it. So that would be the other thing, don't play your music to people even before you think it's done. Just play it to people that you respect and hear it through their ears. So those are the two things.
I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
The best memories. I don't, that's a good question, but the best memories. I mean, I like listening to the Spinners, or you guys call them the Detroit Spinners. I love like Mighty Love and One of a Kind, Love Affair. And it brings back memories of first discovering soul music and stuff like that. So, I mean, it brings back sad and happy, so basically memories, good memories and bad memories are melancholic memories, so it's sort of that kind of thing. Yeah, I'd say and I mean, Allman Brothers at the Fillmore, it's like that reminds me of hearing them the first time out on a field. Led Zeppelin, hearing the first album, remembering seeing them play that album live, in a big at Boston Garden. So, different music brings back different memories. And I couldn't really point to one. It's just sort of on the day. I might say, it's like saying, what's your favorite record? It's sort of like one day it's going to be this, one day it's going to be that,
Last one, Arthur. If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
God. Well, you know what it is? When I was working with Dylan, I had convinced him to end the album we had done the album and they had hired me to add like bells and whistles and polish and make it sound like an 80s record. And we had everything recorded and we were pretty much done. And I said to him, Bob, you know what? It would be amazing for you to just do a song, last song on your album, acoustic guitar, harmonica, your thing, the people, how they discovered you originally. And so he said, let me think about it, or whatever he said. I don't. And then the next day he came in the studio and said, let's do it. And the thing was, I had booked a ticket on a train to go to Boston from New York to see the Celtics play that night. Okay. So I'm in the room and we do a take and it's great. And he does another take. And as we finished, I go like that. It was like, yeah. And I leave. And I go and I catch the train with my friend Stu, who was playing guitar with Dylan. And we go to the game. And the thing is, it was Michael Jordan's first game as a pro in Boston. I don't remember the game at all. I remember I got the ticket stub, and then I just finished my book. So I did some research and I found out that was the game. We went for Michael Jordan. Okay. But then when Dylan did his book, he talked about that moment, which, it shocked me that he talked about me asking him to do a song, and he did it. And I was absolutely right. And it was like he wrote the song Dark Eyes, and he wrote the song that night. So it was just such an insane thing. And literally I left, and, I don't know if I had stayed, what would have transpired if we would have talked about it. If he would have told me that he just wrote the song, if I would have asked him, but we never discussed it. So then I didn't know for 20 years or whenever his book came out that he had done that. So it would have been nice to have stayed and savored that moment, like who knows what would have happened. But I did get to see Michael Jordan, but I don't remember shit about the game. So that would be it. By the way, Dark Eyes, amazing song. He did a version that's kicking on the internet with Patti Smith and Dylan singing Dark Eyes. It's it's a classic Dylan song. And because I asked him to do it, he said it's the first time in his career he ever wrote a song because the producer asked him for something. So it's sort of a memorable, for me, it's sort of one of the high points in the career, but I didn't stay to savor it. So,
I must check that version out because I love the original.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, Arthur, that's me done. Thanks very much. Is there anything you would like to mention before we wrap up? Any upcoming projects? I know you have mentioned a few, but anything else you're excited about?
Yeah. I mean, I've got my book with Faber and Faber that's coming out, but that's coming out in a year. And I've working on Beat Street 40. So we're going to be screening it in New York for Tribeca Film Festival, and we'll have an announcement that I can't make yet. Read that. And I've got a new comp, a B-Boy Classics comp coming out on Soul Jazz, which is coming out in May, which is great. It's a lot of the classic B-Boy anthems, and it's called Break His Revenge. And Break His Revenge and Planet Rock are on it, but then a lot of the classics are on there. And I'd say that's really it. I've done, that's it. Those are all the things I'm working on right now.
Yeah, Beat Street, wow, brings me back to my childhood.
Yeah, that's a 40-year anniversary, man.
Wow, 40 years.
Yeah, there you go.
I look forward to that. Well, Arthur, again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. There's lots more I could have spoke to you about, but...
Okay. Well, you got an hour, man. It's going to bore people longer than an hour, Yeah. We can do a part 2 when the book comes out,
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I look forward to that. I'll get the book. Yeah.
All right. Cool, man.
Have a good day, mate.
Bye.